NASCAR's had some embarrassing moments they want you to forget about. For example, maybe the rain that caused the big one at Daytona in the summer of 2022, or maybe tiregate at Indianapolis in 2008. However, these races were completed, obviously, and are still a part of the NASCAR history books. But in 1956, a bizarre mid-race boycott at the Tulsa fairgrounds led to the stoppage and cancellation of the race, and NASCAR hasn't mentioned it since. This is the race that has been wiped from NASCAR history. In June of 1956, the NASCAR Convertible Series was scheduled for 2 races in the Sooner State. The first race was at Tulsa Fairgrounds, followed by a race at Taft Stadium's quarter-mile oval. After the fact, NASCAR deemed the 2 races a moderate success. This built up hype for the Grand National Series that would be racing in the state just 2 months down the road. It would be the first time ever that NASCAR's premier series would race in Oklahoma. There were actually 2 races scheduled, one at the Oklahoma State Fairgrounds and the other at Tulsa Fairgrounds Speedway. The races would be held on back-to-back days. So let's fast forward 2 months after the convertible races to Friday, August 3rd, 1956. The Grand National drivers took on the anticipated race at the Oklahoma State Fairgrounds. In only a field of 12 cars, Jim Paschal took the checkered flag to claim his only victory of the season. So it's interesting that there were only 12 cars because race promoters expected a field of around 30 cars. Well, that's what they were promoting to the fans anyway. It's reported that the long commute was difficult for a lot of teams and it just wasn't worth the time or money. Nevertheless, the 12 drivers that raced at the Oklahoma State Fairgrounds packed up their equipment directly after the race and headed towards the Tulsa Fairgrounds. Remember, the races were held on back-to-back days. There was one addition to the field for Tulsa, which was John Shipper, who entered his convertible. This brought the total field count to only 13 cars. When the drivers showed up to Tulsa Fairgrounds Speedway, there were immediately a lot of concerns. The drivers showed up and realized the fairgrounds track was nothing more than a large expanse of dry hard pan clay with traffic cones to demarcate the turns. And even worse, according to one report, the only lights at the track were a pair of bulbs that lit the grandstand area. So that's really bad. Some drivers, most notably Lee Petty, were already frustrated from the Oklahoma State Fairgrounds race earlier that day. Petty specifically had led over 150 laps of the 200-lap race and was leading until 7 laps to go when he suffered a mechanical failure. So you could imagine how frustrated he was to see such a poor track in Tulsa. Despite the concerns and frustrations, qualifying went on as usual. After qualifying, there was another issue that came up. Dust. An absurd amount of dust was kicked up during qualifying, which led to drivers arguing with the race promoters before the race with understandable concerns about driver safety. However, there was clear weather and 6,000 fans in the stands that wanted to see a race, so the show went on. As soon as the green flag dropped, a huge dust cloud covered the 13-car field. Almost immediately, the track began to break apart. Reportedly, some drivers claimed that they couldn't see more than a yard in front of them. By lap 9, Bill Moore's car overheated and he was done for the day. John Shipper lost control of his convertible just 2 laps later and crashed out. On lap 17, Jack Zink crashed out of the race due to poor visibility. So Jack Zink only made 2 starts in NASCAR's Grand National Series. His 2 starts were the Oklahoma State Fairgrounds race and this race at Tulsa. As we will find out, this race was wiped from the history books, so he is only credited with 1 start. Zink was actually the race promoter for this event, but he was also an Indy 500 winning owner and a part-time race car driver. He was a fan favorite for the race, being a local guy and all, so his exit was not a popular one. Back to the race, the sun was also setting at this time, which made the poor visibility thing even worse. Drivers did not want to even try and overtake each other out of fear of a crash. Over the next dozen laps, there were 2 more retirements, bringing the tally to 5 retirements out of the 13-car field by lap 29. So let's skip ahead just 5 laps later to lap 34. Lee Petty had enough. He was 2 laps down already, possibly due to going slow because of the poor visibility. Petty pulled his car off to the side of the track, some reports say on the start-finish line, and got out of his car. He climbed up the flag stand to try and grab the red flag from the flagman. Petty then got into a brief fight with the flagman. Before local authorities made it to the flag stand, Petty secured the red flag and waved it to stop the race. The other competitors made their way down pit road. Moments later, an argument erupted in the pit lane between the drivers and the promoters, and the fans were confused and frustrated. Some reports say that a lot of fans began to riot, but others claim there were just a few wild people. Either way, someone called the city police to contain the crowd. The fans knew there was no saving the race, and they wanted their money back. The fans were determined to hang around and complain until they got their money. Luckily, the sponsors quickly convened and agreed to give fans their money back. So the 6,000 fans left with their money back, race teams picked up and left, and so did all of the NASCAR officials. And NASCAR never mentioned this again. So that's a wild scene and a lot to take in. But there was really nothing that happened after the fact. NASCAR and everyone involved just ignored it. Speedy Thompson led every lap up to the stoppage, but was not credited with the win. No prize money or points were given out either. The race is officially considered either cancelled or disbanded, depending on which source you look at. In the end, Lee Petty was not fined by NASCAR, no lawsuits came out of it, nothing. Everything just continued as usual. Just a week later, the Grand National drivers were back to racing. The following race was interestingly held at Road America, the only time the Cup Series ran there in its history until 2021. But in this case, it did kind of seem like NASCAR sided with Lee Petty. With the NASCAR officials just picking up and leaving, they probably thought this track was just as big of a joke as the drivers thought it was. Plus, NASCAR never returned to the Tulsa Fairgrounds track again. If something like this happened today, NASCAR would be all over Lee Petty and penalizing him and all sorts of stuff. So I saw another great point in doing research for this video. So if the NASCAR Convertible Series did a race at the track just 2 months prior, how come NASCAR officials saw the state of the track and the problems with it and were like, oh yeah, let's bring our top series to this place, it'll be great. There had to have been some red flags raised when they saw the track, lack of lighting, or dust issues, right? But an article posted to NASCAR.com in 2020 stated the convertible race at the track was a moderate success, so maybe some of these issues were unforeseen. Perhaps the weather or time of day played a factor in the failure of the track. But this doesn't explain the track surface or the cones on track to mark off the turns. Maybe they just simply overlooked it because they already had it on the schedule, but I really have no idea. But that pretty much wraps up the video, but I'm going to do a quick disclaimer. There are some articles that have slightly differing facts, so I mostly stuck with Racing Reference and Mark Almond's 2011 account of what happened. Racing Reference is pretty reliable, and Mark's account of what happened appears to be the most up-to-date and refined story. Also, it came directly from NASCAR.com. Some articles published way back in 1956 have some details added or left out, and some have different documentations on what lap everything happened. So even though the story is pretty consistent across the board, I thought I should mention this, just in case you guys want to do your own research and find sources that say something that contradict what I said in this video. Anyways guys, that's it for this video. I hope you did enjoy. If you did, make sure you leave a like and subscribe if you are new. And I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.